Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show on this Saturday night. Saturday, March 11th. Thank you for tuning in. I'm glad to have you guys here. What is banking contagion? Well, it's almost like contagion from a flu. You go in someplace and somebody's coughing and got the flu, and maybe 5 or 6 other people will catch it and come down with it. If you got a problem in the financial system that's caused a bank to go down, is that problem affecting other banks within the financial system? And as these banks start to go down, the carryover effect, which is that banks are interlinked. They're linked to other banks through loan obligations. Banks lend to other banks. They're all tied in together now at this stage in the game. So contagion is when one big bank goes down and the problem that affected that bank and made it go down is out there and the other banks are feeling it too. In this case, unrealized losses on their bonds. Because when a bond sells and it's got almost no interest linked to it, say bond rates are under 1%, and the banks buy those bonds, they're almost 0%. Say they're 0.5% or whatever. They're very low yielding bonds. The banks buy those bonds en masse as a place to put their deposits. And then if the yields go up on those bonds, then there's losses to incur to the bank for the bonds that they purchased. Because now bond prices have fell. Basically, it's the same thing with anything out there. I mean, if you go out and you buy silver at, say, $30 and the price drops to $20, you've just realized a loss. Bonds are the same way, except bonds work in a reverse. As bond yields go up, it's like the price falling. I know it's a little bit confusing, but bond yields have went up. And this is the quickest pace the Fed has put us on, is this amazingly quick pace of bond yields going up. By raising the rate, raising interest rates on these bonds, on said bonds. So when bond yields go up, it's actually the market is falling because the bonds that were purchased earlier aren't worth as much because they're not yielding as much. So these are unrealized losses from these bonds that the banks are holding, and this is the cause. This is the root problem why this big bank failed, is they needed liquidity. They had these unrealized losses from these bonds, plus liquidity was flooding out the door in the form of a bank run. Now we got a whole bunch more banks that are in problems, and this contagion. Now I've explained to you what the contagion is. It's spreading right now. We don't know how far it's going to go at this point. This is the weekend. All this happened rather suddenly at the end of last week. We might actually be facing the situation if this thing spirals out of control. Now, I've heard rumors that 10 banks are in trouble right now. Not just 10 banks. And of course it's spreading across to the other side of the pond, to the other side of the ocean. It's spreading across to Europe now. So we're going to get in and take a look at some of these articles. This one comes from Reuters. Europe's banks are sucked into the global rout as high rates. The reality hits home. Europe's banks suffered the worst day in 9 months. The sell-off began in the U.S. after tech lender SVB ran into troubles. The bank rout comes amidst the end of the cheap money era. London. European banks shared tumbled on Friday in wake of the dramatic sell-off of U.S. lenders as concern spreads that the sector will be vulnerable to the rising cost of money. In other words, rates going up. Rates going up is what's caused all this. You know what? I'm going to tell you guys, honest to God. The Chinese and the Russians, right now they're having a well, I don't know. I'm just making this up. But right now, I can just imagine them in my mind having a toast over there, clinking their glasses together, going, whoopee, whoopee, and giving each other high fives, Look, the American banks are sinking. And then the next toast is, here's to the Fed. They lift their glasses. Here's to the Fed. You're doing a wonderful job of tearing America to pieces. Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like if you wanted to destroy this country's economy, and I mean that makes us weak and vulnerable. What if our whole financial system freezes up? Say, oh, Glenn, that can never happen. You get too many of these banks go down, even if they're small banks, and the FDIC can't handle it properly. I mean, look, the FDIC is having to spill out a lot of money right now. Anybody that's got less than $250,000 in SVB Bank or whatever is insured. Well, those are the first people that are insured. They'll probably get paid off. What about you guys out there? Will there be any money left when it hits your bank? Because the Federal Deposit Insurance Commission, they can only cover about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 big banks go down, or medium-sized banks go down. And suddenly, they're tapping out. Sorry, guys. They'll be tapping out. And then it'll hit the under $250,000 depositors. And if you got over $250,000 in the bank, what are they going to do? Tell you to whistle for your money? Think about these things right now. And this contagion could spread over this weekend and into early next week. I just don't know yet how far the contagion could spread. I know that there's a lot of banks in trouble right now. If it spreads too wide and too far, there's not a whole lot the Fed can do right now. The system could lock up, and then there would be something that they would have to do. But at any rate, the one thing I wanted to point out about all this is, and the one thing that you're not going to hear on these other channels is huge problem for the Fed. What do? Well, if they hold the line, let's say Monday or whatever, even if it's a bit of contagion and a little bit of whatever, and they hold the line, and this is most likely what they'll try to do. They'll try to hold the line, stay on course, keep raising rates. Most likely what they'll try to do, and ignore this situation. Well, this is what caused the situation. And as they raise rates higher, if they try it, this could develop into something much bigger with the banks. More troubles. I knew something was going to break. Another thing, guys, I've been preaching to you guys for the longest time I've been telling you about this deflationary spike event. This is it. This is it right here. I knew it was coming. This is it. This is the deflationary spike event that's taking the banks down and gonna spiral the markets into deflation unless they fix it. So if the Fed wants to hold the course, this is what I want to tell you guys, and I think that's probably what they'll try to do. Because on the other side of this, if they break down to this, they're going to spiral us off into a mighty inflation like you've never seen before. They got to hold the course to protect the dollar. It's either, at this point, it's either the dollar or saving the system. But they're going to, because the system is just right now they could argue, well, it's one or two banks, and we'll cover it, and we'll continue with what we're going to do because we're not going to save the system right now because we're so into this fighting inflation, and we're so into what we're doing, we're going to continue, and so they hold the course. Well, it's going to get a lot worse. In the end, and this is what I've been telling you guys, in the end, this is going to force the Fed's hand because the system's going to get worse and worse and worse. What they've created is right now they've created the deflationary spike event. This is not going to go away until the Fed relents, until the Fed does something about it, until they fix it. It's like if you're driving down the highway and you ran over a spike and it went into your tire and you heard a hiss sound. And you said, well, I'm going to ignore that. I'm just going to stop in the service station. I'll fill my tire up with air as tight as it'll go, and I'll drive as far as I can. So that's what you decide to do, and that's what the Fed might decide to do. But then it leaks out, and you have to stop to the next service station, the next service station. After a while, it starts leaking out faster than you can get to the next service station. And that's what's going to happen to them. They're going to have to fix it. And that's the thing. I mean, just like you would have to fix that tire if you wanted the air to stop leaking out of it. It's just simple math. It's just simple. And that's where they're at right now. They've hit the wall. The Fed's hit the wall. Now they can continue on a little bit further if they want, past this wall. But if they ignore it, it's going to get a lot worse. And it's going to get to the point where they are forced to fix it. So the further they go with this, if they fix this now, now the next question you should be asking me is, how do they fix this? You're going to have to lower interest rates back down again. Down to zero or even negative. Sorry, but that's the only way. It's called yield curve control. It's called quantitative easing or whatever you want to call it. I don't care what you want to call it, but they're going to have to do enough of it where they're going to stall what's happening. That's how you fix it. That's how you fix this tire. Is you got to lower those interest rates back down again, and you got to start injecting money and liquidity into the system. What's happening around here? Let's take a look. It says SVB, Contagion, government scrambles in the United Kingdom, over in Great Britain. It says, as of late Thursday night, Friday morning, the fallout from the shutdown of Silicon Valley Bank in the U.S. had reached the shores of the United Kingdom and Europe. The Bank of England sought a court order to place Silicon Valley Bank into an insolvency procedure. Says the move could affect as much as 30% of the United Kingdom tech startups, with potentially 10% in trouble, industry sources estimate. Wall Street dives, Treasury yields tumble as bank worries spread. Okay, now here, I never discussed with you guys what happens if this contagion just goes nuts and really spreads come Monday morning and into the early next week. And a number of other banks start to go down too, carrying other banks down, and it spreads out wider. I hate to tell you guys this, but it could freeze the financial system if the contagion were to spread too widely from this. This is just like if somebody has a disease, if somebody goes into the doctor and they got gangrene, the doctor can't tell you for sure how far that's going to spread. He's like, yeah, I'll do what I can to fix it, but, well, they're not even doing what they can to fix this. What they need to do to fix this is lower interest rates down to zero and do it now. But they know that'll destroy the dollar. So, I wanted to say something to you guys. Yesterday I come on the show and I said the title was "Are You Scared Yet?" I had a picture of a scared guy on there. You know, that was a little bit insensitive of me to put that on there because yeah, we're all getting frightened. We're either getting nervous anxiety from what's been happening. It might not be coming out exactly as fear. Some people it's coming out as fear. Other people it's coming out as nervous anxiety. And it's because these fools that we've got in charge of this world right now are driving the bus off a cliff. And I mean, it's getting really serious. You know, it's the people who put them in office. And they're becoming more and more corrupt all the time. They don't know when to stop. And, I mean, where it'll all end in the end, I don't know. But I do know the people are the only ones that can actually solve these problems, are the people, not the people in charge. Because the people, if you always look to somebody else to solve your problems, and this is what mankind does when they elect these elected officials. They're saying, well, he'll solve my problems. No, he's just going to screw you over. The people need to solve the people's problems. People need to work together. And this is how all these elected officials got in place in the first place, is they made it on the backs of the people. The people are the foundation. They hold up the rest of the building. It's just that these guys that are on the top, they think that somehow they support it all. They don't support nothing. It's the people that support this world. And slowly but surely, these ones in charge are slowly putting all the people inside a sardine can and sealing the lid. There's no air in here. We're all packed in. Oh, too bad. You let us put you in there. And now we're going to seal the lid. You know, and I mean, they're pegging every person out there in the system. It doesn't matter whether they're a round peg or they're a square peg, they're driving you into a round hole. They're driving the square peg into a round hole. That's what they're doing. And of course that's going to hurt. And there's no reason for it. The politicians and the world leaders out there could treat the people the way the people deserve to be treated, with respect. But through their, what's the word I'm looking for? It's on the tip of my tongue, the word I'm looking for. But they don't treat the people with respect the people deserve, because they've grown cocky about it all. It's just like they're not in touch with the people any longer. And now we got this crisis coming in here. And I don't know for sure that the contagion might not spread early this week, and it could actually, at the very worst case scenario, it could shut the system down. The best case scenario is if this banking crisis were to be somehow able to be plastered over. And that might be what happens. I just don't know how far this is going to go. It's like an infection. It might clear up. That's the way with a doctor. Doctor goes in and say some young fella comes in with an infection, gives him the antibiotic, sends him home, and he doesn't know for sure what's he going to see in 3 or 4 days later. It could spread to his whole body and kill him. Or it could disappear and clear up. That's the way with this banking thing. So what's the worst case scenario? It could freeze the system. Lock up the money system. What would that look like? Well, you guys go into your banks on, say, Tuesday or Wednesday, and they just basically all close up. You're in the same boat as these people who had banking at SBV or whatever, SBV or Silicon Bank. You'd be in the same situation. Be your bank. No access to money. Talk about a panic. See, if that were to happen, if the worst case situation in this were to happen and it were to lock up the financial system, now can you imagine the panic if everybody's bank was locked up early next week? Banking holiday. And nobody can even go to work. Everything basically has to close. Everything. Imagine the panic in America if that were to happen. The panic to get things up and running again. And what would it take? And who could get things up and running again? The combination of the Treasury and the Federal Reserve could get things back and up and running again. But they would have to make major changes to the financial system to do so. They would have to put out immense amounts of liquidity. And change the... And like I say, they'd have to lower the interest rates back down again. They'd have to undo the stuff that they've done. And talk about a shock to the dollar. The dollar would probably lose 30 cents the first day. And can you imagine what would happen to gold and silver? Ain't going to be able to get any. You go into your coin store expecting... Oh, I heard so many times on my show, I've heard these guys come on here and say, oh, I was just into my coin store and they got all kinds of monster boxes. As if there's never going to be a silver shortage because they see a few monster boxes sitting on the shelf or behind the vault. You know, and they go in to ask their dealer, oh, he says, yeah, I can give you all the monster boxes you want. Yeah, that's the way it is today. But you get some big event happening in the financial system, and these big players could clean all of that out in the first 10 minutes. And you go in there, and what do you see? Empty shelves. Bare. Everything's bare. Everything's stripped off. Even the anything that even smells like silver's gone. And the gold too. And they're closed. They say, well, we're closing our doors too. Because we got no product to sell. And, you know, then you're so sad. You go and you look online what the price of silver's doing. Oh, it went up $10 yesterday. Expected to go up $20 more tomorrow. And you ain't got none. And you can't buy any. This is what could happen. Seriously, because we're in these kind of times where weird stuff's happening. And don't think it's impossible. Because that's the first thing people are going to run for. They get scared. The banks everything starts to close up. They're going to run. They're going to take their money out of the bank. And they're going to want to get it into something. Especially if the dollar starts to depreciate. And it's rock and roll, up and down sort of thing. I told you guys, dollar could go from hero to zero overnight. And all these people are so self-satisfied, you know. I'm all in dollars now. I got the dollars and everything's deflating right now, you know. Yeah. But you get too many of these banks go down, you watch the Fed pivot. And pivot in a monster of a way. And then all of a sudden, watch the dollar index. Well, I mean, okay, it might not show up so much in the dollar index. The dollar index can actually go up even when the dollar's losing value in purchasing power. Because it's being compared against a bunch of other currencies who are having the same problems, if not worse. Okay, guys. This is starting to get kind of wild and woolly and exciting, what's happening right now. But it's also scary. And, you know, you guys aren't the only ones who's feeling it in your gut. You know? Terrible situation the world's going into right now. Thank you for listening to my show. I really appreciate my viewers out there. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.